when you teach, it's an act of faith because you have no idea whether anything you're doing is going to stick with them over the years.
Oh, yeah.
You have no idea. But occasionally, that one kid comes back and tells you 20 years later or 30 years later that I
Yeah.
really appreciated you as a teacher. And that's your true pay right there. I'm sure you've run into adults who were kids when you were influencing them, wouldn't you say?
One always comes to mind, and I don't know whether it qualifies or not.
Uh-huh.
But I had a kid at Glacier, the name of Paul Kipper, and his dad was a real estate guy in the area, and when when school first opened, we had bright fresh kids, and we first day of class, I was calling roll in a PE class, and in fact, it may have even been a non PE class. It might have been a health or something else. Doesn't make any difference. But I had the kids lined up on numbers and letters. So I was calling roll off and trying to identify kids that with a name and a numero kind of thing. And so I noticed there's one kid, I don't think he answered when I was calling roll. And so I asked one of my TAs, I said, who's number 63 or whatever it was? And said, that's Paul Kipper. Well, I don't think he answered when I called. He said, no, he didn't, because he doesn't talk. And if you'd ask again, called out his name again, somebody from somewhere would have answered for him. And I said, why do you guys cover up for him? Does he have some issues? He says, yeah, he's just kind of a bashful kid, and we always like to have him around and that kind of thing. But it makes a hell of a difference if you're being a pain in the butt and not willing to identify yourself versus the way he was. And it was, I had him in a sit-down class. I guess a second class in that same semester, I guess it was. And so I'd go over and kind of sit on the corner of Paul's. And he'd kind of drift off, and we'd talk a little bit, and he'd just barely get some words in, and it was probably a year later that before all of a sudden we were doing something, and it was more than just answering a question or who's here kind of thing. And I looked around, God, well, I better not make a big deal of this because too many people have been covering for him too long. And so I waited till after class and I asked him, I said, Paul, did you answer when I called your name? He looked at me kind of funny, as if to, oh geez, I've been caught. And then I got a note from his dad. He had an insurance company on as you're going down Des Moines Way. His dad had a little real estate office in there, and then they came to I don't know, PTA meeting or something, and the dad came over and said something to me, but he said that was the first time that, to our knowledge anyhow, that he'd ever spoken in school. You know, I thought, woo! But you know, you do those kinds of things, and then you hope like hell that somebody notices, or maybe that nobody notices except Paul notices. And so, you know, and I think that's the unfortunate thing of what drives teachers out of school, out of teaching, I should say. Because you don't have time to stimulate those kinds of responses. Or maybe you have, but you didn't have time to hear it. I don't know.
Well, that's a good memory to have of him. And just think, there could be others like him who you'd never found out about.
Oh, sure. Yeah,
You know, in newspapers they say, well, today it's all online and there are comments, but you remember when newspapers had letters to the editor.
Oh, yeah.
And they would say, if you got one letter to the editor, that meant that 20 other people felt the same way, but they just didn't take the time to write a letter. And that's the same thing with a student, you know. Maybe they just didn't take the time to tell you, or their parent didn't, or you just didn't run into them.
Yeah.
But to have that one, that tells you made an impact.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I think it goes along with what I was thinking about just a little while ago about how many Paul Kippers or semi-Paul Kippers have gone through and haven't haven't had the opportunity to respond to somebody that had, had a chance to respond. Hard to say. And teachers are so busy teaching that they just don't ever get the opportunity to call it, get the names in the system and think, well, geez, maybe English isn't my best, but with the language arts and with this and this, maybe I ought to think about going into a language-related kind of thing. And you never know. However many you're just so damn busy trying to get grades in and do all the things that you're required to do to help to meet state standards and that kind of thing. I don't know.
Well, I think what you're describing is why, in my mind, teaching is the highest thing you can ever do in life.
Oh, yeah.
I bow down to teachers.
Yeah.
Seriously. I believe that is the highest calling you can have. And I admire you for having done it. You education, I mean, certainly with a PE flavor and sports flavor, but education has been your life.
True.
And that's worthy of admiration, I think.
See, and I guess maybe that's why a lot of people who do teach for a short period of time will get out of it simply because there is no retro feed, no, maybe you have no clue that this individual isn't even doing what a number of them are, have acknowledged or have had acknowledged for themselves. And Glacier was only, it was a small school, and we were so busy dealing with the kids from Highline, Evergreen, Highline. So we got all of those kids that have been they pulled out of the high school where they were. And I never realized what a bummer that was. Because here were kids who had they'd been since kindergarten. They were down to one one class or maybe two or 1 years to be able to graduate with this group. And fortunately, I guess it was the staff in dealing with students and that kind of thing, and behavior and all that. It may be that, they just didn't realize what the impact was. In athletics, we knew what it was, because here we got the 3 high schools, 3 middle schools, and we not are we all battling our current teams' issues, thinking, yeah, all the good guys got to go over there, or all the good gals got to go over there. And the other kids were rich enough or were whatever enough that they could get moved or keep from getting moved. And so you just never know why all those things happen.
You've given me a lot to think about here.
I just really feel badly that first, and I may have told you this, and I think it's a vote of confidence that if you're Kipper, I haven't told you before about the importance of that, but to not have had an opportunity to tell you about, hey, have you ever thought about this? Have you thought about that? Because there are kids and teachers that aren't we given the opportunity, or maybe the opportunity was provided, but it just didn't fit at a very good time. And you think, well, gosh, if I just had a break in my time to get some word to these, maybe we can make a difference here.